They dressed him in silk not for his convenience or comfort but as a form of control. He was just a boy, brought not to a whorehouse but rather to an emperor's court. Some men possessed everything in Rome, gold, power, and gods that looked like them. Others had become mere baubles. He was trained to dance, to flatter, and to obey. His actual name is lost to history, but his body was exchanged from hand to hand and would always be part of some of the empire's darker rituals. They called him a pleasure servant, but within the walls of the palace he was a captive adorned in riches. If you've heard of any Roman emperors, you haven't heard of the boys who served them. He came from somewhere in eastern provinces, possibly Syria, maybe Cappadocia. His parents were poor farmers. They had no choice. A tax collector offered them silver for their son, not for labor, but for beauty. He was moved across deserts and seas, from markets and slave lots, directly to the heart of Rome, the Palatine Hill, where the emperor stayed. They renamed boys like him, bathed them in perfume, and stripped them of their identity. No family, no language, just obedience. He was trained to amuse. He learned how to move to entertain and how to move in a slow, seductive motion. He learned to sing in a voice just soft enough to please. He learned how to pour wine without saying a word. He learned to smile without feeling and serve without thinking. Older eunuchs taught him the rules, where to look, when to kneel, and how to survive. He was no longer a man. He had become a possession of the imperial household, like gold plates and ivory statues. Sometimes he would see senators chatting about wars they conquered. Sometimes he would hear laughter bouncing around the marble deities around the corridors. He always moved in silence. A servant, but not a freedman. Neither man nor child. In between, they gave him a new name. It wasn't in Latin. It was soft, meaningless, and convenient to forget, just like him. When he was 14, the guards of the palace came for him in the night. No one had told him where they were taking him, and he didn't ask. He had learned that asking questions meant punishment. The room he entered was lit by soft oil lamps. The curtains were moving as if alive. The emperor was lying on a couch of lion furs and jewels, with a face that resembled paint and powder and looked more like a statue than a person. There were others in the room laughing and taking drinks and looking at him. He was told to dance. He danced. The music was slow and the stares were heavy. He didn't blink and he didn't speak. When he finished dancing, there was no cheering, no applause, just silence and a hand motioning for him to come closer. That night was just the beginning, not the end. Days didn't mean anything. He didn't use meals or moons to measure time, only touches, commands, and the parts of him that were lost and those that remained. Sometimes he was merely called on to entertain some senators or simply sent to some visiting dignitaries who would be unable to fuck him or pretend he was just the couch. He had become a gift, now handed around like a banquet dish around the table, but to them he was like furniture. Then a new emperor came to power. The old one had died, poisoned, they said. But the boy did not cry. He had learned how to cry nothing. The new emperor had his preference, as did most of Rome's young boys, and further brutality. The staff of the palace spoke in whisperings of the blood of men staining the marble, of a concubine crying for hours on the other side of sealed doors. No one ever saw him again. Now, at age 15, the boy had even learned to smile through it all. He grinned when they stroked his face like it was a lump of clay. He grinned when they joked about cutting off his hair, his voice, his manhood. He grinned when they suggested that he was well off. But something broke in him. A piece of him, the part that remembered what he was before, was reduced to ruins like an old temple. He started to disappear, hiding behind columns, multi-tiered staircases, anywhere the torches could not reach. One night, he listened in on a senator talking about war, the Parthia rebellions, grain shortages. The empire shook, but nothing changed in the palace. They danced, drank, laughed. He wondered if Rome could rot from the inside out, not with swords and fire, but with rot, what they did to boys like him. Then came the day he had bled too much, it had been punishment too far. They left him in the servants' chamber, bruised and coughing. A doctor came, looked once, and never said a word. He wasn't worth healing, only cleaning and hiding. But an old, wrinkled woman, invisible to all, remained. She had knelt down to him and whispered about a boy from long ago who had escaped. Through the kitchen, she said, "Pass the pigs into the sewers." He did not answer her, but that night, as the palace people partied by the light of torches and the piping of flutes, he sped barefoot past sleepily slumbering slaves and bedraggled dogs. He came to the kitchens where he saw the pigs. He found the stone tunnel hiding behind the spice jars, and he ran through filth and darkness and a torrent of waste and memories. He kept running until he could no longer see the gold roofs above him, until he could smell the sea. No one chased him, no one cared. He had never really been there. But for the first time in a long time, he was more than silk and silence. He was just a boy, running free. He arrived at the coast, in a village that did not speak Latin, only fishermen weaving their nets, old women selling herbs, and children looking without expression. He gave them no name, and they asked him for none. A baker had given him bread. A widow had let him sleep beside the stove. He was not touched for the first time in years. He worked at cleaning nets, getting wood, and putting on salt. His hands, once soft and smelling of dust, were now calloused. His body, once loved, faded with the sun and sweat. His eyes still carried memories. One day a trader came by with scrolls from Rome, and on one he recognized a name. The emperor had died once again, this time in peace while he slept, they said. But he, the boy, knew it was no peace within those walls. He walked to the shore in the evening to watch the sun melt into the sea, and he cried. Not for the emperor or himself, but for the others, the boys still locked inside, the boys who danced, the boys who smiled, the boys who would not run away. He was 17 and still broken, but he was not silent. He began corresponding, not in Latin, but in his mother's tongue. He began to refer to his memories, reflecting on what they did and what they took. He did not care if anyone believed him, he only hoped someone might remember the truth somewhere. Years later, a Roman merchant would find a fragile scrap of scroll in a Greek widow's home, half-burned and nearly unreadable. At the bottom of the last fragment was a single statement written in a tremulous hand: "They erased my name, but they cannot erase my voice." We remember emperors, their marble memorials remain, their names are etched for eternity. But the boys, they leave no shadow, no records, no tomb, no tale. And yet there they were, at the threshold of palace corridors, weaving in and out of silk cloaks that were never their own, and in memories too painful to last on a page. What the empire created was beautiful, what it erased was human. He may never have had a name that we can know, but he had a voice, delicate and hushed, that still echoes, because silence does not mean the end, and forgotten does not mean erased. Somewhere, his words lived on, and today you have learned them. If you want to discover more stories that history tried to hide, don't forget to subscribe. The voices of the forgotten need to be heard.